I'm delighted to welcome on the virtual stage Dr. S. Jaishankar, Minister of External Affairs, Government of India, Mr. Harshpati Singhania, President AIMA, and Vice Chairman and Managing Director, JK Paper Limited, Dr. Sanjeev Goenka, Co-Chairman, NLC 2021 and Chairman, RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, and Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, Co-Chairman, NLC 2021 and Chairman, Hero Enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome them all with a huge round of applause. May I now invite Mr. Harshpati Singhania to give the welcome address.
Dr. Jaishankar, Minister of External Affairs, Government of India, my friends Sunil Kant Munjal, Co-Chair, NLC 2021 and Chairman, Hero Enterprises, and Sanjeev Goenka, Co-Chair, NLC 2021 and Chairman, RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, members, past presidents of AIMA, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you today and a very warm welcome to everyone at AIMA's 6th National Leadership Conclave. The NLC is one of the flagship events of AIMA and for many years has been a popular forum for India's ministers, bureaucrats, business leaders, academics, and experts to present and exchange new ideas on strengthening India. Today, we are privileged to start the NLC with a talk by one of India's most important and influential leaders, Dr. S. Jaishankar, the Minister of External Affairs, Government of India. Jaishankar ji, it's a pleasure to have you on the AIMA platform today and perhaps for the first time at AIMA. You have been one of India's most industrious diplomats, and your imprint is particularly strong on India's relationship with the US and China, as well as our relationship with Russia and Eastern Europe in the post-Cold War world. Thank you for joining us and a very warm welcome to you, sir. It is my privilege now to welcome the two co-chairs and architects, if I may say, of the NLC this year. Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, many thanks for co-chairing the NLC this year. A past president of AIMA, a successful businessman, and one of the prominent spokespersons for Indian industry across many fora. You are a keen observer of policy making and also a thought leader. Thank you for being here, despite being in a different location. Mr. Sanjeev Goenka, you are the founder of this event, and AIMA is grateful to you for your continued involvement in the NLC. Also a past president of AIMA and someone who oversees a large business group with diversified interests, it's a pleasure to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, the overarching focus of this NLC is on leadership in the post-COVID world after the big disruption. On a lighter note, dare I say, when we were designing the conference, we used the nomenclature of post-COVID. The way we are sitting today, I do not know whether we are post-COVID. But anyway, in fact, the disruption has not gone away and is casting a shadow on life, business, and governance. COVID is reshaping geopolitics. The origin of the pandemic in China and the disruption of global supply chains owing to the lockdowns have pushed the world to have a rethink on reducing its dependence on China and foster new relations. Closer home, China's recent infiltration at India's LAC during the COVID crisis has necessitated us to re-examine an already finely balanced relationship. A new world order is taking shape, one of contained globalization, and India has a big role to play in it. This was already set in motion with Atmanirbhar Bharat Yojana, positioning India as an alternative manufacturing hub. However, the restructuring of economic policy and bridging the trust deficit will have to go hand in hand for India. We would have to play a greater role in regional institutions like SAARC and ASEAN and have a deeper engagement in the Quad by rallying like-minded nations. A new US administration and changed equations in the UK and Euro area post-Brexit also offer an opportunity to India to play a strategic role in the post-COVID world. Our role in international vaccine distribution has also created favorable optics in this new world order. We look forward to hearing from Dr. Jaishankar in this session on how India can claim a rightful place in the new world order and how it can deal with the uncertainty of the post-COVID geopolitics. Mr. Sunil Munjal will be in conversation with him. It is now my pleasure to request Mr. Goenka, the co-chair of this conference, to formally introduce the Honorable Minister. Sanju, over to you.
Thank you, Harsh. Dr. Jaishankar, Minister of External Affairs, Government of India, my very close friends, Harsh and Sunil, Rekha, ladies and gentlemen. It is my special privilege today to introduce Dr. Jaishankar, a special man with special qualities, whose presence, whose participation makes this event that much more meaningful. He's a man who's revolutionizing India's foreign policy. He's a man who's rewriting India's role in global affairs. He's a man who's reinventing India's strategic thinking. He's a man who has energized Indian diplomacy. Thanks to him, and thanks to the Prime Minister, every Indian today holds his head high. Dr. External Affairs Minister of India and our special guest today epitomizes the spirit of a new, assertive, confident India. Dr. Jaishankar, a very, very warm welcome to you on the AIMA platform. He's always sought transformative assignments. He has been involved with, and he has led several key initiatives, not least with US, with China, with Japan. As the world order changed again with the rise of an assertive China, he was in the middle of the action again in the tumultuous period of global financial crisis and the resulting shift of global economic gravity towards China. He served as India's ambassador in Beijing from 2009 to 2013. He managed to improve economic, strategic, and cultural relations between India and China, and also managed to keep the border disputes under check. Now, he is playing a central role in building an international coalition to check China's hegemonic aggression. After 3 years of extraordinarily distinguished service in diplomacy, he's now playing a huge role in redefining India's position, India's role, India's stature in the emerging world order. Once again, sir, a very, very warm welcome to you. You're a man we all respect, we all admire, we all look up to. And your gracing this occasion means the world to us. Thank you, sir. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, co-chair of the Conclave, to conduct the conversation with the Honorable Minister. Sunil.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanju. Minister, thank you for making the time. I'm going to pick a few pointers from the comments made by Sanjeev, Harsh, and Rekha. I have a few of my own, and we've also invited the audience to send in their questions. So often on, I will pick one from there as well. Since we were talking about this being a situation which has impacted the whole world, when I'm saying this, I'm talking about the pandemic right now. A couple of months ago, it looked like we were coming out of this. It certainly does not look like that today. So to your mind, what are the big lessons that the pandemic has taught us just this past 1 year itself?
First of all, let me begin by saying that it's a great pleasure to be with all of you today. And Harshji is right. This is my first participation at the National Leadership Conclave of the AIMA. I thank you for inviting me to share my views with you. And it's a great pleasure, it's a great pleasure to meet friends today, and it's a safe pleasure when you meet them digitally. So good to see you. So let's start with the pandemic. I again agree with Harshji that we shouldn't yet be talking about post-COVID, though our thoughts should go there. We are very much in the middle of COVID, no question about it. Now, what is the situation today? Okay, I think anybody who's honest about it, if you're not sort of doing the blame game routine, which often characterizes our politics, I think people would accept that there is today, multiple variants at play, which whose potency and whose infectivity was not naturally realized earlier. You have the UK variant, you have the South African variant, and you have the double mutant, which is today impacting especially the western region of the country. And in all of this, I think it's also a reality that there was a lot of societal complacency. I think for any of us to point a finger at anybody else, I think is a very short-sighted attitude, because the fact is everybody was complacent for a certain period, because there was a sense in January, February, because look at our February numbers. Our February numbers had really come down very, very dramatically. Now, rather than get into what went wrong and who's to blame and what could we have done, I want us all to step back and look actually at the long-term problem and potentially the long-term answer. And the fact is that, what the pandemic has brought out are actually deficiencies in our developmental model, in our progress, in our health infrastructure. And it's like, if you subject a system to stress, all the cracks and the gaps show up in that period. Now, a year ago, I want you all to go back and think about it. We were scrambling a year ago. How do we all make masks? How do you make PPEs? Where do you get the ventilators from? And, the country sort of pulled up its socks, came together, and one part of us recognized that we should have had all those things in some quantity earlier, that there was, that our way of doing business, our vision of development was inadequately anchored in our own capabilities, that we were far too dependent on supply chains abroad, and here I have a bit of a bone to pick with business. I would say that very candidly. I think business is very fixated on its bottom lines and is not doing enough to build its own supply chains at home. But I'll come to that later in the conversation. I'm throwing it out as a provocation early in the talk. But look, the fact is today, if, I'm just giving you an example. Let us say if there's a huge surge in demand for medical oxygen, somewhere one part of us collective, us should be asking ourselves, why isn't there enough medical oxygen production at home? So I think there are long-term lessons. There are two kinds. There is that finger-pointing, blame game thing. I mean, I put that to a certain kind of mindset and a lack of I don't consider that a responsible conversation. But I think for an association like yours, which is so deeply anchored in industry, this is a moment really to reflect on how do we build deeper strengths, capacities which would allow us to face this kind of storms in the future. For me, the great takeaway in the making is that this is a lesson to us that you cannot, you can't take risks in good times and think that the risks will not come back to haunt you in tough times. All the pressures on us today to ramp up production, etc., I hope as a country, as an economy, as an industry, all of us take that as a sort of a message that we need to build very much stronger and very much deeper at home.
Point well made. I'm tempted to respond, but I have a list of questions with me I want to go through before I respond to the question that you have raised. Let me go a little bit to this nationalism that we are seeing around the COVID, around vaccine, around production of medication and others. How do you think it would impact the WHO's program and the GARI program, which was supposed to provide for those who cannot otherwise manage?
Because
there is both sides to it. As one can understand, there is a need for countries. We are hearing it in India itself. People are saying, why are you exporting the vaccine when you need it here? And the same thing is happening in other countries. So I'm leading off the question from there.
Sunilji, I think that's a very legitimate question. And again, I would say the blame game walas will have their attitude and their approach. And I think as serious people, let's look at it. Today, as foreign minister, I am pushing other countries, particularly some big countries, saying, look, please keep the raw materials flowing for vaccines to be made in India. Okay. Now, why am I doing that? Because the fact is that there are global supply chains. There is nothing is made. Very few things are made exclusively in one geography. Very few societies can say we are autonomous of our reliance on others. So ask yourself this question. Can I, on the one hand, go around the world and tell people, guys, keep your supply chains flowing towards me? And by the way, the end product of that supply chain, I'm asking you for raw material, but I'm not going to give you the vaccine. So now, and look at the vaccine itself. I mean, today, your largest vaccine under production is an international product. It's a co-creation. It's a co-production. So, I think those who talk about, why are you doing this for the world? Why are we not? It's not that we are not prioritizing our people. I mean, as things got tough, we actually spoke to the world very honestly and said, look, we tried, we have done our best to live up to commitments, contractual commitments of producers, COVAX commitments, the Gavi stuff you spoke about. But right now, please understand that I have this very serious situation at home, and I think most countries understand that. But if you get into this, why are you exporting abroad at all? Then somebody else will ask, why am I exporting to India? And that is so short-sighted. I mean, only really irresponsible people, really non-serious people can make that kind of argument. And by the way, there are some around, as you would have noticed.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. Actually, we are more in agreement than you would imagine with this approach.
No, I imagine it from you. I have no problem. I know that.
But also going back, if you see, the entire world actually gained significantly from the globalization that was going on. And this part of it happened with China, Russia, US pulling in different directions, Then the previous president we had in the US also caused some of this looking inwards. And then country after country started to close their borders in a manner of speaking. The reality is information flow is global right now. Supply chains are global right now, exactly as you mentioned. So the question that people are now asking is, what does Atmanirbhar Bharat translate into? Will it isolate India? How will it impact India's foreign policy and its approach to business and economy?
Sunilji, first of all, I would contest the assumption with which you started. Entire world gained by globalization. I don't agree. I think many countries gained very much more. Some gained less. Some did not gain at all. More important, within countries, some people gained, many people actually lost. And what you saw, particularly in the United States, sure, I mean, you want to see the advocates of globalization, go to New York. Okay, look at the Wall Street. Everybody is for it. The old political establishment loved it. Go out to what they call Middle America. After all, why did you have the Trump phenomenon? Precisely because masses of people saw their quality of life, their employment opportunities actually negatively impacted by globalization. But I don't want to only talk about America. Look at our own country. I mean, you're all in business. Can you really tell me in the last 15 years globalization has worked for everybody? I mean, would you look me in the eye and say your industrial estates and your MSMEs have not been affected by cheap imports from subsidized economies? Has it not impacted employment in this country? So you have to understand, I mean, we haven't had fair growth. We may, GDP numbers look great, but GDP numbers don't translate necessarily into the right employment numbers. So you've had a growing employment problem precisely because globalization skewed your economic fairness and economic opportunities within the country. So today, the fundamental, I would say, assumption behind Atmanirbhar Bharat is to have a kind of human-centric, or I would say in economic terms, employment-centric growth. Look, you guys could all do well. It doesn't mean that some guy in Noida or somewhere else gets a job. I need to ensure that as well. And I think a lot of our challenges are not different from, it's a variation of what happened in the US or what may be happening in other parts of the world. So I think we need today manufacturing expansion at home, services growth at home, a transformed agriculture, most of all, a kind of a economic mentality which doesn't say, I will look after my bottom lines. I am prepared to do, sort of integrate supply chains from abroad. I really don't care what happens to my people and my smaller enterprises at home. And somehow it's the government's obligation to de-risk all of that. I actually hear that. I have seen people in the business community, some of whom are professionally given to giving advice to the government, take this external supply chain as some kind of entitlement. And they actually think the government is obliged to secure it for them. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to make sure that you guys all build businesses at home which will give employment at home. So I think that we need a fundamental mindset change. Somewhere what started off as a good thing, a great thing, and all of us supported it, the 91-92 reforms, I think it got off track. And somewhere we lost the sense of who's benefiting from that, and more important, who's not benefiting from that at home. And I hope very much that this crisis will actually reinforce that. Because what the pandemic has done is it has actually expanded our sense of security. Today we are thinking of health security. We are thinking, many countries thinking food security. We don't fortunately have that problem. But certainly, I mean, to me, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing for return to the past. I'm not arguing, my idea is not that government should take over stuff. But I do think that Indian industry owes it to India and the Indian people to create supply chains at home, to constantly, shall I say, update that kind of pyramid on which you're all sitting at the top, and find a way by which the country buys in to the larger economic path.
So good, thank you. So it's a longer conversation. I'm happy to have that with you as to what the Indian industry is both able and willing to do at this moment, especially in supporting the country and all its people in the crisis. And you're right, there are some in industry who could become more responsible. But to be fair, there are plenty in industry today who are both willing and wanting to play a bigger and a more responsible role, not just towards themselves or their bottom lines, but to a much larger responsibility. And I think that's only right. It's only expected. Let me shift gears a little bit. I have a question from Ganesh Natarajan. This is about China, and it says, Ambassador Jaishankar, nobody knows the country better than you. With their economic and military strength over India at this point, what form of diplomacy are the options available to us to counter and overcome their aggression?
Look, if you look at the last 40 years, Sunilji, we've had peace and tranquility on the border. I'm not suggesting that we solved the boundary dispute. I'm not, thinking that this is something easy or that it was round the corner. I mean, we've been very honest about the complexity of it. But the fact was that the rest of our relationship got built because of an assumption that, neither party would use force, neither party would threaten the other. We had different agreements which translated those good intentions into commitments. Now, last year, that changed. The Chinese, with no provocation, brought an enormous force to the border, as you all know. Now, the point is very, very simple. I mean, this is not rocket science. You cannot completely sort of disrupt the peace and tranquility on the border and then carry on with the rest of the relationship. I mean, I've been saying it for the last year and I will continue to say it. It has not changed. And if this relationship is to progress, I must have a return to peace and tranquility on the border. There's no two ways about it.
Absolutely. This is a clear requirement for any of us to live today in the world, is to have peace and tranquility, both for civil as also for economic and business needs. It is a complex situation, no doubt. Moving a little bit towards newer developments, could the Quad become another NATO, or do you ever foresee it having a NATO-like stature, ability, strength, influence, etc.?
A short answer, no. Okay, then I'll give you the longer answer. Look, we have, because we regained our independence in 1947 and we value it because it was achieved after so many decades of struggle, we have stayed away from alliances. And in many ways, actually, as a country, we don't know what all of that means. I mean, because we never bought into it. Okay? The people who use that NATO kind of analogy, either they don't understand us at all and don't know where we are coming from and what our independence means to us and what is the mindset of India. So, one explanation I have is complete ignorance or lack of understanding of the Indian mindset. Or the other, they actually are doing, using these words deliberately to kind of, I would say, discourage us or dissuade us or mislead us from doing what is in our own interest. So what is our interest? Our interest is today, as a country, just like it would be in any other sphere. I mean, I would say this would apply to us, maybe the four of us as people, or it could apply to three of you as businesses. If you have common interests, it is very natural for parties which have common interests to say, okay, let's find a way of working that together. I mean, you have AIMA, or three of you are together because you have a common interest. So think of Quad as a common platform of four important players who actually are looking at demands, unmet demands in the market, if you would. So at a recent conference, in fact, I gave some examples. I said, look, what is it we discuss when we meet in the Quad? We're discussing, okay, vaccine production. What do I do with critical and emerging technologies? How do we ensure that our students move around or travel takes place in a COVID environment more easily? How do I deal with issues like maritime security or cyber security? So it's very reasonable in international relations for countries which have convergences and agreements and common interests and shared interests to work together. But I wouldn't exaggerate this and frankly wrongly depict it to sort of create that imagery of NATO, military alliance, Cold War, etc. Because that's never been India's heritage. In fact, if you look, that kind of thinking was something which other countries in Asia used to propagate favorably in the 1970s and 1980s. So even during Cold War, we stayed away from NATO. Not everybody in Asia did.
Yep.
So it's natural for those guys to use it, NATO. I don't buy into that analogy at all.
Do you think, since you talked of common interest, you spoke of business and economy, do you think that could get a leg up between the Quad members who work closer together in use of technology, something you mentioned, and now technology increasingly is a driver for civil society, economy, and business. So do you think this could be leverage for these countries to work together on the economic side?
Absolutely. Absolutely, for a variety of reasons. One, I think from the stresses of COVID, but even predating the COVID, today, like in business, in international relations too, trust has become a kind of a premium commodity. Okay. Reliability is also become more important. We all want to, do business with each other in a way in which we don't feel it is being unfairly leveraged. Okay. So I think when you are looking at the world ahead, countries would be more comfortable with partners who would not, in their view, leverage technology or link trade to non-trade issues. So there would be those, again, as I say, like in a society with human beings, those who would have greater comfort with each other and those who may not have the same degree of comfort with each other. And I would certainly, to my mind, when I look at Quad, because you mentioned Quad specifically, when I look at the US, I look at Japan, I look at Australia, these are all countries where we have very strong relationships. There's a great deal of comfort. There's a lot of business to be done. Each of these relationships, I can see autonomously a great future. And I think if you have the ability to work together collectively, that is more. But having said that, I would say there would be others. We've had to look at sort of rescheduling the visit of Prime Minister Boris Johnson. But certainly it's our expectation with the UK, for example, that we would be doing more business in the years to come. I just had the French foreign minister. We spent a lot of our time really discussing what the possibilities are with France and with EU. So I do think that today what COVID has done is it has brought into the debate, into the global debate, by the way, this is exactly what I was discussing yesterday in Abu Dhabi, that a sense that today India is a good platform for global production. I think the world is comfortable to see more production out of India. We are a market economy. We are an open society. Our mindset is global. If I say so myself, I would say by and large the world trusts us. I really think this is the time to step up. So if I were to put your two questions together, which is Atmanirbhar Bharat, which gives me more capacity, and this environment, which gives me a more trusted profile, better branding, if you would, I think there are possibilities there.
So let me push a little bit beyond this point you made. You made a point of the positive side of the good connection that many of these nations are demonstrating, need to work together, more friendship, etc. At the same time, there are also hot spots. There are also some old fault lines starting to show up again. There are some new ones getting developed. There are points of tension that we have seen getting to a point where they're becoming serious conflicts or near conflicts. Do you believe, do you see a possibility of a war-like situation anywhere in the world before we settle down to what looks like could be the new world order that you're talking about?
There could be local conflicts, some of them very significant. We are looking at a very worrisome situation, say, in Afghanistan. Okay. And there are ongoing conflicts, say, in a geography like Africa. So there will always be conflicts in the world, but I think at a kind of a mega level, between the really big powers, I think that era is behind us. That era is behind us because all said and done, I spoke to you earlier that globalization has not been fair, but that doesn't mean globalization has not been real. Okay, I think we are a very globalized world. There is enormous interdependence and interpenetration. Among the major players, if they do things, it will have a cascading impact on themselves. So they are so interlinked with each other. So a lot of what you hear, among the favorite theories of the last decade or two has been, for example, this whole Thucydides trap. Look, these are mind games. These are ways of, it's like my telling you, don't do this or else. So it's a way of discouraging you from exploring options. So that's part of diplomacy.
We hear that in the stock market very, very often, by the way. You better cash in, now it's going up, or you better cash out, it's going to collapse. It happens very often, you're right. I have a question from Zubin Kabraji. Says, with the exit of US forces, and I'm taking you up on Afghanistan that you mentioned, do you see a larger role for India to play in the region economically and the larger geopolitical framework? In a sense, you referred to this. The US government has hinted at this, that India needs to come in and be more a part of this conversation. Where do you see this ending up in terms of India playing a more active role here?
India has always played an active role in Afghanistan, not just after 2001, even before 2001. Okay? Afghanistan is a doorstep away. So how can we not have a role, influence, presence, activity out there? It is just that you sort of select your pathway or your platform which is suited to the situation. Okay. Now, in the post 9/11, post 2001 situation, for us the best way of helping out was through developmental projects and socio-economic activity, because other people were doing other things, and our intention, after all, of going there was not to do one-upmanship. Our intention of being there was to help out and contribute to a larger global endeavor. Now, in the last 20 years, what that has done is it has won us a lot of friends. It has created a great goodwill for India, a lot of acceptability for India. People look at us in the last 20 years and associate us with the good things in Afghanistan. Okay? And in the same period, there have been some tough things which happened. A lot of that gets blamed on somebody else, who you and I both know. When we look at the future ahead, I think it's important for us to work with the international community. I think and see from our strengths and our capability and our networking and our relationships, where is it that we can help to create a better Afghanistan? Because the point I keep making is, look, at the end of the day, our relationship is with the Afghan people. Okay? We are not there to play politics. We are not there to say this is my favorite and that is not my favorite. That's not the game we are playing. We are actually playing a larger stability, development, progress, prosperity game.
So, Minister Jaishankar, that was very well covered. We have only 2 minutes to go, and I have a long list of questions. Instead of my asking a question, let me ask you, is there a comment you would like to make to us, which you think is important? You started off with some comments regarding the COVID and industry's role. Is there anything else you think from diplomacy, geopolitics, geoeconomics, is a comment you would like to make to us right now as we close this session?
The only comment that comes readily to my mind, and I say this from a brief stint which I did in the corporate sector after leaving the government and before I came back to it, I do think that there has to be a stronger partnership between business and government in taking forward our national development. I mean, I know I know all of you, of course, but I know so many of you. And I know, look, everybody wants, you are just as nationalistic and patriotic and aspirational as everybody else. But I do feel we need to think much more, in a sense, much more, CSR should not be a box to check and a check to write, okay? Or even a project to make. There's got to be a CSR mentality. And when I look, I spent a lot of my life, 5 years in Japan, 3 years in Singapore, 4.5 years in China. And these were the countries where actually the economies got built in this era. I think the government-business partnership, because at the end of the day, when I look at business, for me, business are employment creators. And to my mind, how do we build a stronger national economic base? Because that is the big takeaway from the COVID experience, that we have to de-risk our interaction with the world by actually having a stronger baseline at home. And I think I would hope very much the post-COVID conversations are focused on that line of thinking.
Minister Jaishankar, thank you very much for a very comprehensive, very straightforward and open dialogue. This truly helped us start the National Leadership Conclave on a high. Thank you very much, as always, for a wonderfully interactive session with you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we have come to the end of the first session of the conclave. The next session starts in 10 minutes. Please stay tuned. Thank you.